Baby steps is interesting because it kind of puts you in this big kind of like walk and traverse through it, sort of like piece by piece. There's all these scenes full of like variables, things. There's like birds and water and bells and tiny. I mean, it's a really immense and textured place that was designed along with Dave Cusillo and Maxi Bach. Yeah, so I think maybe we start. What were your first initial? I'm not sure what your experiences were with Baby Steps. Is also one of those games because of its like difficulty, which tradition is also like one of these games that you could definitely watch other people. You could talk about that, but how was Baby Steps something that you're jumping through? What were some of the
I love this game so much. As I mentioned before, I was teaching an isekai course, and I think it was Rush Russell who was first writing about how Baby Steps is absolutely an isekai, where you're ported into this parallel world. And so I was teaching it this last spring and got to spend a lot of time playing it and thinking about it with my students. Like Plop, I think it's important to say, the way that you end up, all you can do is walk, but walking is actually quite difficult. Or at least it starts difficult and then it becomes kind of intuitive where you're using bumpers and the joysticks
I saw it was starting to go
to control each of the
You thought, I'll give it a good kick to counteract the fall.
So no, my first experience with this, and maybe the literary scholar in me, so I can't help but try to place it in the tradition. And there's something so Beckettian, like Samuel Beckett, about both this work and I think a lot of Bennett Body's works, getting over it, the pot that the character's in. There's a famous play by Samuel Beckett where all the characters are in similar kinds of pots. So I've been kind of thinking about that in this big empty wasteland. It's also like Beckett, it's methodical, it's bleak, and it's also hilariously funny at the same time. And the character seems to be struggling to do the most basic tasks, which Watt and some of Beckett's best characters have this the struggle to do anything normal, I think, again, reflects so beautifully on what we presume to be normal or what we take for granted, mobility or modes of conversation. Or I think you covered this in your interview, using your hands. Why is it that this character can't use their hands? Why is this weirdo or this dork just unable or unwilling to think about using his body the way that other people do?
Yeah, that was one of the things. That was one of the. I don't know if that made the. I don't know if that exactly made the cut in the interview. I mean, we talked about it a little bit, but one of the big developments I think for Bennett's games is he's gone from these games being purely mechanical and sort of having a light narrative layer. Sports is a really helpful shorthand, right? Sports can be really helpful because it grounds people in something that they probably already know. You just sort of are familiar. And he says that about that is one of the nice things about working with the body is that, as a game designer, you're not trying to teach new systems. Players come in with expectations for how the body should move, even if they've never done the thing. That's a very as a designer, you don't have to teach someone again ostensibly how walking or swinging a cricket bat or rock climbing. People sort of have shorthand for that. One of the interesting things that definitely came up during the conversation was how the kind of the narrative, the story, so to speak, was something that grew out of a long period of experimentation. There's a lot of obviously back and forth, whether you should start with story, you start with mechanics. And he does really seem to have squared the circle just by having an elongated design period and coming up with this idea. Once you start spending time with this character who's only walking, then it's kind of well, why isn't he using his hands? And that offers a whole set of other questions about Nate's unwillingness. In this case, it's Nate is unwilling to ask for help. And that is kind of in a nutshell, what his problem is, so to speak. He will not ask anyone for help, which is very relatable, but that kind of grew out of the mechanics as opposed to them starting with I want to do a game about, this kind of, I don't know, incel-esque fail son kind of character who, if you started with the story, maybe you would have ended up with a different type of game. But the mechanics really, in this case, really did drive the narrative components. I thought that was really interesting.